All right, the number of foster kids in L.A. County has been climbing the last few years. One of the problems is that the number of homes to house the kids is down by a lot. Well, there's an event happening in Inglewood that's aiming to find and convince more people to become foster parents, and the key to it all involves going to church. Find out how when Take Two continues. Back now with Take Two on 89.3 KPCC. I'm Martinez. The number of L.A. County foster care homes has dropped 32% in the last decade, but the number of kids in the system who need those homes has gone up. That's according to the Department of Child and Family Services. So the DCFS and other county officials are tapping the faith community in L.A. for help. That's a topic of a town hall event in Inglewood tonight. It's hosted by the Chronicle of Social Change, a news site focused on vulnerable youth and families. Daniel Heimpel is the publisher.
Thanks for having me, eh?
All right. The Chronicle of Social Change has done some reporting on the national foster housing crisis, which inspired your upcoming event. Can you tell us about some of the major findings?
Yeah, so when you look nationally, I think one thing that really sticks out is if it weren't for relative caregivers, the foster care system across the United States would be in serious crisis.
Wow.
We've seen a loss in overall foster homes in 15 states where they've lost actual capacity to care for kids. And they're increasingly relying on relatives to do some of this work, but oftentimes they're not paying relatives the same amount that they're paying non-relative, stranger foster parents. So that's one thing that sticks out. Another thing sticks out is while in California and federally, everybody has decried this concept of a group home as a place to keep children where 6 or more kids are living at a time and really focused on family-type settings. Many states across this country have seen an increase in group home utilization. California has actually dropped for the past few years, but nationally that's on the rise as well. So those are some of the things that really stick out.
When it comes to the number of foster care homes in L.A. that are declining, do we know why?
Well, a lot of it had to do with the decline in overall numbers of kids in care. So there was a time when the number of kids in care dropped as they lost the kids. They lost the capacity. You couldn't keep a home open if you had no kids to send to that home. So during that time, it dropped. Since then, I think across the country, we've really struggled with how to recruit and retain foster families.
But the number of kids in the foster care system has gone up, right? So how do we square that with the number of foster homes going down?
Well, that's, I think, creates the urgency and the reason why we're doing this event, the reason why we looked nationally to try to understand what are the big, broad trends, is that there is a need for caregivers on all levels. You have, on one side, a push away from institutional settings for understandable reasons, but that creates a strain on the family-type settings. And then you have, as we've seen in L.A. County, you referenced the numbers, you've seen a dip in overall foster homes. That hurts the capacity. So you turn to relatives, okay, you turn there, but you still need non-relative caregivers. And so what L.A. County is trying to do is really tap into the faith-based community to ensure that they're able to recruit families and also help a foster family or even a biological family stay together by virtue of the community that church can bring.
Daniel, I understand 2 motions were passed last month that focus on developing faith-based programs to help foster family recruitment. Tell us about that.
Yeah, Catherine Barger had a motion which...
L.A. County Supervisor.
L.A. County Supervisor Catherine Barger had a motion which was really focused on how can that community in the 5th Supervisorial District do kind of what these South LA churches are doing, which is what are the ways that they want to step up and help in this? So not very prescriptive. It wasn't saying we're going to give you money to you churches to recruit a bunch of foster families. It was let's get a consultant to work with you to figure out what you need and go back to DCFS and figure out where you guys can help. And so trying to engender the faith community to help on all levels of foster care in Pomona, that area. And then the other motion by Supervisor Solis was really focused on how can the faith community be helpful in reducing the disproportionate number of Black children that enter the foster care system.
In general, how easy is it to be a foster parent? Because I can imagine there's probably a lot of parents out there that would make great foster parents, but maybe they're thinking, this process is too much, I can't do it.
Yeah, I think that that's been historically a big problem. You have very long wait times to become a foster parent. You got to go through background checks. If you move from a different state, the background checks got to follow you to that state. You need to make sure that your house is properly stocked, that you have the amount of bedrooms necessary. So there's a lot of hoops that you have to jump through that I think turn a lot of people away. And that's why the county is really looking to new places to go. The faith-based community has been involved in this for a long time, but now the county is really stepping in, and there's a bunch of churches in South L.A. that are really stepping up and saying they're going to open their doors.
Based on what you said, Daniel, then tell me about the faith component, this event that you're doing.
Yeah, so L.A. County, I think, a lot of folks have realized that there is a real crisis in the capacity of foster homes, of places for kids to stay. And out of that recognition, a bunch of big funders came together to create a collective impact group, which spun off this group of people who reached out to some South LA churches, and they worked together with those churches, asked what those churches need to braid them together. And right now there's about 6 churches that are lined up to create this faith network, a network to recruit foster families. And, one of the people at our event is going to be Pastor Jeremy Dixon. He is a foster dad himself at the Center of Hope. And I think he's a real example of how your faith can help you step up to do this work, and how having a community around you can ensure that those children have the support they need and that the parents have the support they need.
I'm talking to Daniel Heimpel, publisher of the Chronicle of Social Change. So how would this work in practice? Churches would make the announcement on Sundays, or how would it work in general to get these kids in foster homes kind of hooked up together?
Well, they're ironing out all the details now. They're coming up with a memorandum of understanding between these churches, and they're going to be actively working with the Department of Children and Family Services to identify parents that would be suitable, and try to get them in the pipeline and try to get them licensed, go through all the hoops that we mentioned before, and get in there.
Why do you think churches in particular, the faith communities, is getting their involvement is so important here?
I think a church is a place where people slow down and have a community. And I think that any family does well in community. And I think that being able to tap into other people around you who can look out for you is a pretty invaluable resource. Another thing is that, you've got thousands of people in these congregations. So you have a pulpit from which you can reach to a lot of people very quickly in a very personal way.
That was Daniel Heimpel, publisher of the Chronicle for Social Change, talking about the declining number of foster care homes in Los Angeles and across the county. His organization is co-hosting an event today to discuss how the faith community can help address this problem, and it takes place this afternoon at 3 o'clock at the Center of Hope on Crenshaw. And we have more information on Take Two's website, take2.org.